What if I told you that the very thing you're chasing is actually the reason you keep failing? I'm talking about motivation. That electric rush that fills your veins when you start something new. That powerful, unstoppable feeling when a fresh idea lights up your mind. You tell yourself, this time. It's different. But a week later, when the work gets dull, when the shine fades, so does your motivation. And what's left? Another half-finished dream. Another goal abandoned mid-journey. You start thinking you're lazy, maybe broken. But you're not. You've just been running on the wrong fuel, because what drives success isn't the fire. That burns bright. It's the flame that never goes out. So let me tell you a simple story. A story about a young watchmaker and an old impossible clock. Inside this story lies a secret, a truth about a power far greater than motivation. A quiet force that never fades. One that guarantees you'll finish what you start. Stay with me, because the lesson this young man learned might just be the one you've been waiting for your whole life. Leo was a watchmaker. He inherited a small dusty shop from his father, a man once known as one of the finest craftsmen in the country. The shop smelled of brass and oil, filled with the gentle ticking of dozens of clocks. Leo was gifted. He had the same sharp eyes, the same steady hands as his father. He could understand the secret dance of gears and springs that made time move. But Leo had a problem. He was impatient. He hated fixing old watches and replacing dead batteries. That kind of work bored him. He wanted more. In his heart, Leo believed he was born to create something extraordinary. His sketchbooks were filled with drawings of grand, complex clocks. Machines that moved with planets, stars, and tiny figures that danced at every hour. Those ideas thrilled him. Whenever he started a new design, he worked for hours with unstoppable energy, feeling alive and inspired. But the moment things got hard, the moment a problem appeared that he couldn't solve, his excitement vanished. Frustration took over. And just like that, another idea joined the growing pile of unfinished dreams. Because of this, Leo's shop began to fall apart. The counters gathered dust, the ticking grew quieter, and the customers, who once trusted his father, stopped coming. One morning, as sunlight crept through the grimy window, the doorbell chimed. An old wealthy man entered the shop, carrying something wrapped carefully in velvet. When he placed it on the counter, Leo's breath caught in his throat. It was a magnificent grandfather clock, tall, heavy, carved from dark polished wood and engraved with gold. My father left this to me, the old man said, his voice trembling slightly. It hasn't ticked in 50 years. I've taken it to a dozen watchmakers. They all said it's beyond repair. But they also said your father was the only one who could have fixed it. The old man studied Leo's face closely. They say you have his talent. Then he smiled faintly. If you can make it work again, I'll pay you enough to save this shop. Leo's heart pounded. This wasn't just another job. This was a challenge. A legendary clock no one else could fix. A chance to prove he wasn't just some repairman, he was a genius. I'll do it, Leo said confidently. And that night, for the first time in months, he felt alive again. The next morning, Leo began his work. For days he was unstoppable, carefully dismantling the old masterpiece piece by piece. Every tiny gear, every spring, every screw fascinated him. The sound of the ticking clocks around him felt like applause. But soon the thrill began to fade. He realized the clock wasn't just complex, it was monstrous. More than 1,000 tiny pieces, each one fragile, each one demanding precision. The real work wasn't glamorous. It was slow, painstaking, repetitive. One by one he cleaned and measured every part. And one by one his motivation drained away. After a week, his workbench was covered in tiny gears, screws, and springs, and Leo felt nothing but exhaustion. He sat there staring at the clock's broken heart and thought, this is a waste of time. I could be creating something new, something brilliant. His frustration boiled over. In a moment of anger, he slammed his hand down, and a tray of microscopic screws scattered across the floor. Leo dropped to his knees, picking them up one by one, and something inside him broke. The dream, the excitement, the pride all gone. That night, lying awake in the dark, Leo decided he would quit. Tomorrow he'd call the old man and tell him the truth. The clock was unfixable, but life has a way of speaking to us when we least expect it. As he packed away his tools, he opened his father's old desk, something he hadn't done in years. Inside, hidden beneath stacks of yellowed paper, he found several small, leather-bound journals. His father's work logs. He opened the first one, expecting pages filled with sketches, inspiration, brilliance. But what he found instead was something entirely different. Tuesday, one entry began. Cleaned the escapement wheel of Mrs. Gable's pocket watch. Took 3 hours. The third gear was worn. Must replace. Another entry read Thursday. A young boy brought his father's old watch. Not worth much, but it meant the world to him. Spent the afternoon fixing it for free. The look on his face was good payment. And another Wednesday. Worked all day on the town hall clock. My back aches. Still not right. Failed to fix it today. We'll try again tomorrow. Page after page, it was the same. Simple, honest, ordinary. Not passion. Not genius. Just consistent, humble work. And then at the very end of the final journal, Leo found a short paragraph written in his father's neat handwriting. A man who works only when he is inspired will be a man of many beginnings and no endings. The great clock does not tick because it is inspired. It ticks because it was built correctly. The work of a craftsman must be the same. You do not show up because you feel good. You show up and in doing the work you might, if you are lucky, begin to feel good. Leo stared at the words for a long time. And for the first time he understood. His father wasn't a genius because he was always inspired. He was a genius because he always showed up. He had the discipline to do the dull, difficult, thankless work every single day. And that was the secret. As the candle burned low beside him, Leo closed the journal, a quiet determination rising inside him. Tomorrow he would try again, but this time differently. The next morning, Leo unlocked the door to his shop. Before sunrise, the air was still heavy with the smell of metal and dust. But something inside him had changed. He didn't wait for excitement. He didn't reach for his sketchbook or daydream about new inventions. He simply walked to the old grandfather clock and picked up a single tiny gear from the bench. He made a new rule for himself, simple but unbreakable. Every morning, 4 hours of focused work. No excuses. No distractions. No waiting for inspiration, even if it was boring, even if it was frustrating, even if he didn't feel like it. He would just show up. The first few days were brutal. His mind screamed at him to stop. Every minute felt longer than the one before. There were mornings when he made no visible progress at all. Sometimes he'd spend the entire 4 hours cleaning a single stubborn part, and still it wouldn't fit. The old Leo would have smashed it to pieces out of rage. But the new Leo, he simply set his tools down, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself, I'll try again tomorrow. And slowly something started to shift. Day by day, piece by piece, Leo began to find rhythm in the repetition. The silence that used to irritate him now felt peaceful. The soft ticking of the other clocks became a kind of music. He started noticing small details he had never seen before. The perfect symmetry of 2 gears, locking together, the clean shine of brass after hours of polishing. It wasn't about excitement anymore. It was about craftsmanship. He began to take pride not in his ideas, but in his patience. And that patience started to build something far more valuable than motivation. It built character. 3 weeks passed. The sunlight through the dusty windows now fell on a neater, quieter workshop. The counters were clean again. The air felt alive, but in a calm, grounded way. Then one afternoon, as Leo leaned over the disassembled clock, something caught his eye, a flaw so small he almost missed it. A single Tooth on a gear bent ever so slightly out of shape. It was buried deep inside the mechanism, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. Closely. Leo smiled faintly. This was it. The kind of mistake only patience could uncover. Carefully, with the steady hands of a surgeon, he repaired the tiny gear tooth, and then for the first time in weeks he began to reassemble the clock, one piece at a time, one screw at a time, hour after hour, until the machine began to take form again. Finally the moment came. Leo hung the pendulum, gave it a gentle push and stepped back. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound filled the room like a heartbeat. Leo froze. His chest tightened. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath. The clock was alive. He laughed quietly, not the laugh of triumph, but of relief. Because that sound, the steady rhythm of the pendulum, wasn't just the sound of time. It was the sound of promise, of redemption. Of discipline. He didn't feel a rush of adrenaline or wild excitement. He felt peace for the first time. Leo understood what his father must have felt all those years in this same shop. The joy wasn't in the spark, it was in the steady flame. The next day the old man returned. Leo didn't say a word. He simply nodded toward the corner where the grandfather clock now stood tall, its pendulum swinging in perfect rhythm. The old man walked closer, his eyes widening as he heard the sound. He closed his eyes and just listened. Tick-tock, tick-tock. My father used to wind this clock every Sunday morning, he said softly. I haven't heard this sound since I was a boy. His voice cracked as a tear rolled down his wrinkled cheek. You haven't just fixed a clock, young man. You've given me back a piece of my life. For a long moment they stood there, two men from different generations, both hearing more than just the ticking of time. Leo smiled gently, and in that silence he realized something. The work wasn't about him. It wasn't about being a genius or proving anything to the world. It was about service. It was about preserving something that mattered to someone else. It was about showing up again and again, even when no one was watching. That's what keeps the world turning. Not bursts of inspiration, but steady, honest work. That evening when the old man left and the shop grew quiet again, Leo sat alone beside the clock, watching the pendulum swing. He thought about his father's words, about the years he had wasted chasing sparks that always burned out too soon. Now he finally understood what it meant to build something that lasts. Not just a clock, but a life. The old man's footsteps faded down the street, leaving Leo alone in his shop. The ticking of the clock filled the silence, steady and calm like a heartbeat that never stopped. He leaned back in his chair, watching the pendulum swing, and whispered to himself, so this is what real work feels like. For the first time in his life, he didn't crave motivation. He didn't need that electric rush of excitement. He had found something far more powerful: discipline. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Leo began to rebuild not just his shop, but his life. The customers slowly returned. Word spread that the young man who had once been careless and distracted was now the most reliable craftsman in town. He treated every small repair with the same care he had given to that old grandfather clock. He cleaned every watch, adjusted every spring, and checked every gear with quiet precision. There was no magic, no secret formula, only consistent effort. And somehow that effort began to change him from the inside out. Every time Leo felt tired or uninspired, he remembered his father's words from the Journal A. Man who works only when he is inspired will be a man of many beginnings and no endings. Those words became his compass. And soon he noticed something remarkable. The more he showed up, the easier it became to keep going. Discipline was no longer a burden. It was freedom. He didn't have to fight his feelings or chase motivation anymore. He just had to show up and do the work. And in that simplicity, he found peace. One afternoon, Leo sat at his bench polishing a small silver watch when a young boy entered the shop. He couldn't have been older than 10. In his small hands, he held a broken pocket watch. My dad's, the boy said shyly. It doesn't work anymore. Leo smiled. Let's see what we can do. He carefully opened the watch, examined its parts, and began repairing it. The boy watched with wide eyes, fascinated by the delicate movements. After an hour, Leo handed it back. "Try it now." The boy pressed the button, and the second hand began to move again. Tick, tick, tick. The boy's face lit up with pure joy. Leo felt something stir in his chest to quiet. Warmth, the same one his father had written about long ago. At that moment, he realized the real purpose of his work wasn't to build clocks, it was to build connection. Every tick carried a story, a memory, a heartbeat from one life to another. That night, Leo sat by the grandfather clock, the same clock that had once tested his patience and taught him humility. He ran his fingers along the polished wood and smiled. He had fixed the clock, but more importantly, he had fixed himself. The restless dreamer who once chased fleeting sparks had become a craftsman of steady flame, and with every passing second, the sound of the clock reminded him of one simple truth: greatness isn't built in bursts of lightning. It's forged in the quiet rhythm of showing up day after day. So what's the lesson in Leo's story for us? It's simple, but it changes everything. First, motivation is the spark that starts the car, but discipline, that's the engine that drives it through every storm. You need the spark to begin, but without the engine, you'll never go anywhere. A car that's all noise and no engine just sits there pretending to move. Second, learn to love the process, not just the prize. The real reward isn't in finishing. It's in becoming the kind of person who finishes. Because when you fall in love with the grind, when you learn to take pride in every small, unseen effort, that's when you stop depending on motivation and start depending on yourself. And finally, the simplest rule of all, just show up. When you're tired, when you're bored, when you don't feel like it, that's when it matters most. Don't worry about the whole staircase, just take the next step. Clean one gear, write one sentence. Make one call. That's how real change begins, quietly, patiently, one action at a time. Because the truth is, life doesn't reward those who start the fastest. It rewards those who keep going the longest. Not those who chase sparks, but those who keep the flame alive. Leo learned that lesson through the sound of ticking gears and steady hands. And now that same lesson echoes for you. The power you've been searching for isn't motivation. It's discipline. It's the quiet, unshakable decision to show up no matter how you feel. And when you do that every single day, something amazing happens. The world begins to move with you. With that said, this is the Rising Tailies. And the story wasn't just about a CLOCKMAKER. It was about you, because somewhere inside you is the same spark and the same choice. Will you wait for motivation, or will you build the discipline to keep ticking long after it's gone? The choice, my friend, is yours. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.